Hey folks, John with Complete Technology Solutions, your friend in the computer business. All right guys, so today, by the way, I want to apologize. There's been a little bit of a delay between the last video and now, and I want to tell you what caused that. Here we go. So guys, you might have noticed down in the community section down there, and I do keep up with those messages, guys. When I do a post down there, you'll see I respond to all of you guys. I do watch it. But on that last one, we're working on this HDB, okay? And we're doing the modification on this. The modification on this is very, very easy, guys. The problem is, and okay, before I tell you this, every one of you guys knows that I'm a huge Umarex fan, and this is not going to change that. On the valve block in the HDB, this video is shot and ready, but on that valve block, these guys are using some sort of industrial strength. Oh my God, the entire earth is landed on the top of this Loctite on this thing, and you literally have to destroy the valve cover to get it off. And guys, when I say that, I don't mean that metaphorically or euphemistically or whatever. I'm talking about I have literally destroyed valve tools trying to access it. Oh, and don't get me started on the valve tools. The other problem that we've got is the valve that pokes out of that thing, instead of being normally, half inch or so, where you could actually use a regular valve tool like this, is actually about 2.5 inches long, so you have to use something else. Well, let me tell you, you can't use snap ring pliers because of the industrial strength, insanely let's glue a battleship together sticky stuff they've got on this thing, because they just bend. You can't use pliers like needle nose with a bent angle because it just strips out the holes on the top of that brass cap. So, and by the way, before somebody asks, yes, I even tried heat, and no, it flat won't work. So the way I finally did it, you're going to laugh, is by destroying the cap. I literally had to destroy the cap so that I could get the thing out of there and then replace the cap inside of it. I am not going to post that video, guys, until I get away, and I've already been in touch with Umarex, and he was surprised, by the way, when I mentioned it. But we're not going to do that. I'm not going to put that out there until I'm 100% sure I've got a solution that you guys can follow that isn't going to cause you to rip your hair out, and trust me, I did. So we're not going to get there. Tomorrow's video, heads up, I may or may not have a giant pot. Bet you can't guess what we're cooking, can you? That's right. Tomorrow we're going to do some dyeing. We're going to go ahead and dye a bunch of HDP50s, a couple of HDP50 compacts, and we're going to dye the TM4. The blue is cute, black is better. We're going to do that tomorrow, all at the same time in this gigantic pot. So that video will be hopefully dropping by tomorrow. Now today, guys, this is a special video for a specific user out there. It occurred to me that a lot of people out there are going to be doing the upgrades on all of these by following the videos. And a vast majority of you guys that have done this upgrade following my videos have been able to complete without any problem. But there are times, man, there are times when that spring goes boo, or it dynamites. So today, I'm going to show you what to do when it dynamites. So I'm going to bring in Stumpy super close, so you're not going to see my little face, but you are going to see Stumpy on this. We're going to tear this thing down, and I'm going to show you what to do. Here we go. All right, guys, so let's go ahead. We're going to crack open our brand new HDR68. Man, no matter how many times I see this thing, it never ceases to impress. I love this weapon. All right, we're going to start by pulling out the drum. Set it aside, put that back down again. Now, you do not have to remove this right now. Now, at some point in the future when we do the upgrade on this, you do have to put the CO2 restrictor in here, but for right now, we're going to leave it in place. Now, what you're going to do is, and I'm not going to bore you with all the silly details here, guys, we're going to pull out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 screws, and up on the Picatinny rail, you've got 2 right here that you're going to have to pull out. And those are actually little star wrenches, but you can use, I have a couple Allen keys that fit it too. So let's go ahead and get started on this. I'm going to start with the screws, guys. One thing I noticed about this, and I'm going to try to do all this with you guys on at the same time while we're doing it. I'm going to leave the screws in place as we unscrew these, okay? And that will hopefully stop you from losing them. Although these screws are all pretty much the same length, so even if you did drop one, it's just going to be by replacing it with the other one, so you wouldn't have a problem there. All right. And I will speed through these little sections so you guys can see it go quick and you don't have to wait with my loving voice. Here we go. All right, guys, so we've got all screws loosened up here. On the top, we have removed those 2 screws from right there. We're going to pull the top off the Picatinny rail, set it aside. Now, we're going to lift up on the front edge of this so that you can see how it will separate the weapon. Now, what I have found that works best is, and you can use a credit card, a screwdriver, whatever you want, but just go along the seam a little bit, guys, and put a little bit of pressure on it. And what you're going to feel is you will feel it give way. And as you see, that just popped right up, just like that. Now, when you take this part off, guys, you want to take special note, and you just notice that right there. That's the sight. So you want to keep the sight over there so you don't forget to put that back in. We're going to pull it aside. Now from right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach back. I'm going to pull out this spring. There we go. That's the spring that actually retains the drum in here. And then we're going to put our finger in the barrel, and we're going to lift up on the whole unit, and the whole thing's going to come out. All right, this is our retainer for that for the drum. We're going to pull our barrel out just like that, and we're going to set the bottom aside. All right, so just like last time, guys, we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 screws. Be right back with you. All right, guys, so we've got all 8 of those screws that are loosened up. We're going to take a regular flat tip screwdriver, and what I usually do is start right here by the trigger. Now you want to pry up just a little bit, guys, and I mean a tiny bit. You see it like I'm using a tiny bit of pressure, and just kind of go back and forth on it, and you'll see that it will raise this all the way around. Now I'm going to do this 2 ways, guys. We're going to do this the proper way, and then we're going to do the oopsie way, okay? So just like that, starting on this side now a little bit more. Now here's the trick, guys. On this weapon, this mechanism right here, the entire trigger and advance mechanism, has got a floating pin that actually seats in right here, okay? So that pin goes through this mechanism and sits down in there, but it does move. So when you remove this, if you're not careful, that pin will come up and this whole mechanism will pop out on you. And we're gonna go through that too. So the trick to stopping that is taking your flat tip screwdriver and pushing it against the floating pin, and then lifting up on the whole mechanism, the whole top, as you hold that pin in place. See the pin right there? This is what we're holding in place. Now, guys, here's where things can go wrong. Now, this is where we normally would start the upgrade. You've seen that before. And as you can see, everything here is completely together and functional. But this is not what often happens, and that's what I want to show you. Now, one of the things I tell people, guys, and I'm going to get down here on the level with you guys. Hold on a second here. One thing I often tell you is not to panic, okay? Because anything can go wrong on these. And I mean, anything. You could be accidentally do something, or you can go like this. Uh-oh, oops, uh-oh, oops, uh-oh, springs are everywhere. Oh boy, what are we gonna do? Oh wait, this got to come out. Hold on a minute. Let's get that out of there. There we go. Oh, uh-oh, trigger mechanism. Oh, it all fell apart. Uh-oh, there we go. Oh no. Oh no, Mr. Bill, now what do we do? Ah! Right, so as you can see, guys, this is now completely dismantled, 100%. There are springs everywhere. It's just a mess. This is what can happen if you're not careful. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put this back together the proper way, all right? So let's start this off from, we can start up here at the trigger side if you guys want to. That's the easiest thing to do. So the trigger mechanism itself, this is the one that advances the, when you pull it, actually pulls the bolt back and causes it to fire the round and then snaps back into place, all right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that and we're gonna replace it where it belongs. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take the mechanism that advances it, we're gonna place it back on this black little lever right there. Now you can see how that moves right there, okay? Now, here's the trick, guys. This little spring, and I'm gonna show you closely, can be a pain in the butt if you don't get it in right, okay? Now, remember what the whole goal of this is, to hold this up like that, all right? So the whole thing is putting pressure that direction. So what you want to do is put the spring down with the short end down. So this is the short end right here, and it's down. All right. The other end, and what I usually use to do this, guys, is you can use anything that is sharp. I've got if I can find it here. What I've got here is, this is actually just like a little generic lock pick, guys. But at the end of the day, anything sharp and pointy, what you want to do is, while this end is down, and you can see how it's kind of secured. I'm going to bring this up here closer, guys, so you can see it. So as you can see, that little spring right there, the small end goes down. The up end, which is, you see how it's wound up, goes right here. The goal is to get this up over the top of this. That puts downward pressure on it, okay? So the way to do that is hold this down, and on this side of the spring, you want to lift up and over the top of this mechanism. And what you'll see, guys, I want you to see this, so I'm trying to go slow for you. So you see how this rocks? This piece right here goes up and over the top like that. You see how it goes up and over? And then put it into place right there. Okay, let me bring this up to you so you can see what I just did there. So the short end is here, the tall end comes up and over and slides down into here. And as you can see, that then gives you that reverse pressure you were looking for. All right? All right, so let's go ahead and start on our next part, which is going to be our trigger assembly. Now, on the bottom of the trigger, you've got what, by the way, this was the cutest term I've ever heard. Somebody referred to this as the pigtail, which I thought, by the way, pigtail is about the cutest name for this thing. Now, here's the trick, guys. This can be a little sketchy, so I'm going to get up close and personal with you. Here's the trigger. All right, you see how we're holding it. You want to take the little, what they call pigtail, and see how I've got that sitting in there, and this little end sticks out the front here, okay? Take that little front end that's sticking down and bend it up over. Now I'm going to give you a nice close-up of what I just did. To the long end here, the little bent end goes right there that aims down, okay? And I'm going to give you a little side view of that. Now, this hole goes into this trigger, and this little pointy piece right here will go up between this gap, all right? So put it between the gap. Now, I'm going to hold this up here so you guys can see this. Okay, do you see where that spring, and I'm going to show you with this, is sitting on top of this little piece of metal right here, okay? That spring needs to be pushed down over the top of that little piece of metal, all right? So what I'm going to do is, and you can do this with anything, we'll just do it with the flat tip for right now. But holding the trigger down, press the spring forward and lock it in place. And I'm going to bring it back up here and show you again. Now you can see right there that that spring is now locked in place behind that piece of that little piece of metal. And as you can see, we're going to hold this down there, but the whole mechanism now works. There you go. And it's nice and spring loaded like it should be. That's how the little pigtail goes on. All right, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on reassembling the entire drum mechanism, the advancement, and the lock. So we've got both of our little tools here. Got a couple little springs flopping around, as you can see here. On the back of this one, and I'm going to show you this little setup here, you've actually got a small spring in case that thing should come out that settles against that and goes right there. Just keep in mind, that's how that little spring mounts. I'm going to set it right there. And it is teensy tiny, guys. So if you ever, lose that spring, just remember you're looking for something tiny. And all that does is puts reverse pressure against this, okay? So now watch. Take the spring, slide it in, and the spring fits in a groove right on top there. See that spring in the groove right there. All right, so this mechanism will then sit in place right here. There you go, and as you can see, it kind of sits up in there and locking it into place. There you go. See how that like flops forward now? That's exactly what you want right there. All right, everybody get a good look at that. And I'm going to bring it up to the camera nice and close. So the spring's in place. We're on this little hook. This is that floating pin I was telling you about. And as you can see how that's spring loaded right there. Now, the spring that fell out, one of these little springs actually goes right in that gap right there. And it will hold it down. So all you got to do is take that spring, put it into place, and squeeze it into that gap. There you go. And now you got the mechanism reinstalled. So now that spring is there, holding down this mechanism, which actually forces this forward. All right? So the next phase is going to go ahead and put this is actually the lock for the cylinders. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to put it into place. And the way it works, guys, the spring goes toward the back of the weapon, okay? So the way you're going to mount this thing, it's going to mount right up under here, kind of on an angle, And see this gap right here? This is where that spring is going to go. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull that spring off for just a second so we can set this in place. Set it right there. And as you can see, the bottom here pushes up on that mechanism. See that? So when the trigger is pulled, it all operates together. That's the whole idea. Okay? So once we've got this in place, we're going to push up on it. And we're going to put this spring in. See where we're going here? There we go. And we're going to mount it in there. Now guys, this can be tight because this is a very, very tight spring. So be real careful when you're remounting this one. All right, sliding it forward, putting it in there. And I'm working on a weird angle, guys, so please bear with me. I'm trying not to cover things up, but that can be kind of tough, as you can see. So now that spring is back in there where it belongs, and that whole mechanism is nice and tight where it should be. So as you can see, we've got it all back into place here, guys, and I'm going to try to give you a nice close-up view of it again, so you can see everything remounted. So we've got our spring here. We've got our spring here. We've got the small spring on the bottom, which keeps this thing pushing forward. We got our, what they call the pigtail spring underneath the trigger. And we've got a spring there. And we've got a spring here, which is actually holding tension on this. Now, at this point, guys, I'm just going to push it all down, make sure everything's still back nice where it is, and we are good to go. Now, since we're here anyway, let's go ahead and let's complete the mod since we are doing this. So we're going to grab our valve tool. By the way, guys, this valve tool I have for sale right now for 20 bucks. So if anybody needs one of these valve tools, I've got one ready for you, and I can ship it right out to you. And as you can see, it makes this job a billion times easier. All right, so we're going to pull off our valve here, and we're going to remove that valve block, that nasty little valve block there. And let's see if I can find my power kit, because that's, we're going to go ahead and throw that in there too while we're here, guys. There we go. Now, by the way, for pulling out these valves, this is a really handy thing to have, guys. This is just a little screw thing that goes onto the bottom of the CO2 restrictor. All you have to do is take this, push it into here, and then with the back of your screwdriver or a little hammer, whatever you've got, give it a little tap. And out the bottom, we'll pop the valve block. Now, once you've got that out, guys, you're going to notice in there you've got a little black washer or an O-ring. You're going to want to get that out of there. Not that it would be, that it would damage anything too much, but anything in a system that's sealed like this, you don't want that. So we're going to pull that O-ring out and keep it on the side. Then we're going to go ahead and put our valve cover back on here. Yeah, these valve tools make this a whole lot easier than using the snap ring pliers. I mean, the snap ring pliers were okay, don't get me wrong, but this is just like much easier. So anybody wants these, just let me know. I've got them. There we go, and securing it. Now when you tighten this, guys, don't go super tight with these. All you have to do is snug it and then a tiny bit more, so you don't have to go crazy with that valve. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our rubber O-ring and our, now by the way, the firing pin. Now in the power kits, guys, some of them have actually got this pin. You will find that that pin is almost the exact same length as the one that's in there. So it does not necessitate changing it if it's the same pin. But if you ever do need to get that pin out of there, guys, let me give you a little tip. It's a flat tip screwdriver, but they use that same industrial Loctite on this side. So what you want to do is heat this up a little bit, and then that will absolutely come out. I use a heat gun when I'm doing them. So, all right, let's go ahead and we've got our spring back on. There we go. And let's put our valve back on like so. There we go. Now, take our little cap right in there. Now remember, guys, I usually put this down a little bit on the end here, kind of hold pressure down, because what you don't want, by the way, this little brass piece will also come out, that you saw me pick up right there, that will come out when you remove that little valve too. So only on this model. All right, holding things down, guys. See where my hand is? I'm holding this little mechanism down. Push this in, and then just slide this down into place. Guys, I know I made that look easy, and I've done a billion of these things, but it really is easy if you take your time. Just follow that instruction. All right, at this point, do not forget to put this ring back in, or you will be redisassembling your weapon. All right, we're gonna recap it here and slide everything into place. And as you can see, everything is nice and seamed together. Pull our trigger, we get a nice snappy little pullback on it there. and we are advancing our drum, and we're good to go. So let's go ahead, we're gonna screw this back down, and I won't bore you guys with that. Here we go. All right, guys, now once you've got this thing reassembled here, you've got all your screws mounted down, make sure that your trigger mechanism is still working. As you can see, it's nice and snappy the way it ought to be, and everything is advancing. Now, one thing you want to be assured of, when you put this little ring in here, which is actually the receiver for the barrel, make sure that that's loose and floating. You see that? That's important because this is what holds tension up against that wheel or your drum. So you want to make sure that's floating and not wedged in there. All right, from this point, we're going to go ahead and take our left side of the weapon, and we're going to place the weapon in there. Here we go. Place it in the body. Now, before you like push this down into place, and there are a couple little like plastic things in there, you want to go ahead and take your barrel and slide it into the front there, and you see how that is floating in there. And then you want to go ahead and take your, this is actually the holder, I should say, or the pin that goes through the drum. We're going to slide that in. Make sure that the rounded tip is down. All right, you want that down through the mechanism. Now on this side, guys, you want to make sure you pull that spring back, and that once you've got it seated in place and the barrel's in, that spring is behind this little bar right here. See that little plastic bar? Make sure that spring is behind it. And that the whole thing is still floatable. See how that's moving? That's what you want. Take your other long spring, slide it on there, and just push that into place. And at this point, make sure we're seated down nicely. We're going to go ahead and take the top half of the weapon, and we're going to insert, or excuse me, put it all back together and shove it back down. At this point, go ahead and tighten up your screws. It doesn't matter what order you do it in, guys. Just don't over tighten these things. Get them snug, and then a teensy bit more. If you over tighten them, this is just plastic, and a lot of people tend to forget that. So you don't have to go crazy. I kind of zigzag when I tighten these up, but honestly, it makes no difference whatsoever. All right, there we go. And tightening this one up. And let me finish this up. I'll be right back. So yeah, all right, all screws secured. There we go. Let's go ahead and get our Picatinny rail back on. There we go. Actually, it's not even really a Picatinny rail, is it? This is your Picatinny rail. This is more like just a sight. But okay, put that screw there. Now these are, a second here. For those who are wondering, guys, these are number 2, and they look kind of like hex heads. Number 2. There we go. One down and one more to go. Now, the last thing to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the CO2 restrictor in. So this is the CO2 restrictor. In order to do that, you've got to pull out this cap. By the way, guys, do not over tighten this cap. It's not necessary. And all you'll do is strip it off in there, or worse, you'll strip off where they dimpled that the CO2 chamber to the body. Just don't do it. You don't need to do that. You don't have to have that tight. So just screw these in until they're snug, and then just finger tight. No tighter than that. All right, so we're going to take our CO2 restrictor, and we're going to screw it into the bottom of our valve here. Now, here's where I'm in the minority. I use a little bit of this clear silicone sealant on these. And the reason behind that is the natural motion of charging this weapon, and there we go, and I mean a tiny bit, guys. You can see a tiny bit around the edges. You do not have to go crazy with this stuff. The natural motion of charging this weapon is striking the bottom of it over and over again. The pressure fit ones typically don't fall out, but if you use a tiny bit of silicone, they will never fall out, and yet they're still removable should you need to remove them. There we go. And then we'll unscrew this. But once you do that, you do not ever have to worry about that thing coming out again once it seals. All right, guys, so at this point, we are now ready to test the weapon. Let me grab a CO2 cartridge. Be right back with you. All right, guys, so we're back with you. We've got it all reassembled over here. Now, one thing I want to let you know, once you've got this back together before we test it, take your finger, put it in the barrel, and pull the barrel out. You hear that click? You want to make absolutely sure you hear that click after you've reassembled this. If you don't hear that click, or if that barrel is very tight in there, okay? One of the oldest things I have noticed about this is the spring around the front of that barrel that goes down into the plastic. If the seam, in other words, where the spring ends, is toward the side you're screwing down, it tends to bind. When it binds, it won't allow the spring to actually pull the barrel back forward again. So, take it back apart, turn that seam down, then it will free up the barrel. But you have to have that freedom of motion. And the reason you have to have it, we'll take one of our drums, is because the drum will not fit into the weapon if the barrel won't float. So that's very, very important. All right, so we're gonna test this out, guys. You'll notice we have no rounds in here. All right, we're gonna take one C02 cartridge. And what we're listening for right now is any leaks. So look here, go to it till it stops right there. You don't have to go any tighter than that, guys. Here we go, popping it. I hear no leaks, so we're good. All right, so we're gonna fire off a couple of rounds. Nothing is in this, guys, and we're in a safe direction over here. Nothing is in it. There we go. All right, so this one is now ready to go. This, and by the way, look guys, after it's done, I can open it by hand. You don't have to go gangbusters with this Allen key just because they include it. There you go. So this one is now ready to go. It's modified and perfect. I love them just like this. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Look, I know it was long, but I wanted this to be comprehensive. I'm gonna do one like this on every one of these where I literally destroy it, take it all apart down to springs, and then put it back together so you guys can see how to reassemble it. Don't be afraid of it. You can do this. You can. And if you can't, I'm always here. And a lot of you guys have found out about that by emailing. So there you go. Thank you guys. Have a fantastic week. Don't miss tomorrow's. We're going to do some cooking. And then at the end of the week, I got an interesting one planned for you. One we have never done on this channel before. And it sort of branches off into a different form of ranged self-defense. So we shall see. Have a great week. Bye-bye.